Welcome back to Horrible Summary, and today we're gonna go over Record of Ragnarok. And I do mean we because I have MasterRJT joining me.
Hello everybody, this is MasterRJT. Punching Bag's actually the person who first introduced me to Record of Ragnarok a few years ago, so quite happy to be here making this video with him.
This video is going to be a little bit different because it's both going to be a horrible summary and a ranking video, and I'm specifically ranking each fight, and so far there are 11 of them. As of this video, round 12 is still being made in the manga. I have no idea who's going to win. Speaking of the manga, I have not read the manga, but Master has, so he's going to talk about the parts that are not in the anime yet. I also placed the manga-only fights where Master ranked them in his version of the list. The rest of the list is all my opinion. Now, some people who've been on this channel might ask, what is Record of Ragnarok? Basically, the gods don't really like humans anymore due to, conflicts with the past 100 years. But the Valkyrie Brunhilde proposes a tournament to keep humans alive, and the tournament consists of 13 gods versus 13 historical figures. Yeah, well, actually. The god side mostly pull from different cultures. For example, there's, Zeus, Thor, the devil, for some reason. And usually these characters aren't even that much like their mythological counterparts anyways. The human side mostly contains historical figures, but it also has a few mythological figures as well. For example, there's Kojiro Sasaki, Leonidas, and Nikola Tesla for some reason. And just like the gods, their backstories and powers don't really match up with their historical or mythological counterparts. In order for the humans to stand a chance against the gods, each human fighter merges with a Valkyrie, which usually gives them a weapon of some sort. I almost forgot to mention that the entire series takes place in the afterlife. It is also a weird amalgamation afterlife as well. Anyways, I'll cue the intro. Oh yeah, there's gonna be a lot of spoilers in this one. Watch the show if you don't want to get spoiled. Number 11.
You want me to put the hammer down?
Round 1, Lubu versus Thor. If you've already seen Record of Ragnarok, you'd probably agree with this take. The first is definitely the worst here. To me, I can kind of see multiple reasons for why this fight is a lot worse than all the other ones. For one, it's a victim of circumstance. This is the very first fight in the series, and they were still kind of setting all the rules and tropes in the whole show. Surprisingly, there are a few unique things that make the fight stand out, but that's not enough to save it. For two, the nature of the fight kinda sucks. Both fighters in this fight are kinda just brutes with big weapons. And I mean, look at Thor's weapon. It's gonna be really slow. And for three, the backstory sections suck! Thor's looks like a slideshow. Not even joking here, just straight up.
Earthquake. They're coming! Enemy attack! The Jotun are rushing the wall!
The Jotun army launched a sudden, unexpected attack.
And Lubu's was just boring. It's kind of unfortunate to have the first fight in the series have two characters with really boring backstories. Oh yeah, I was talking about the fight. Ooh, my bad. They don't really do that much in it. Like I said about the nature of the fight, look at Thor's weapon. Due to its size, he can't really do that much. He did have that badass attack where he threw the hammer and then it came back to him. So then he can wind up and slam the hammer really hard. I also like the section where Lubu was kind of riding on the hammer for a second. Take a look at both of these fighters. Who do you think will win? It's Thor. Obviously because Thor's a god and Lubu's a mostly normal person. Even if Lubu could block Mjolnir, he's still getting his legs crushed, and then his arms, and then his head. Notice how I didn't say Thor used any electrical attacks throughout the entire fight. I mean, sure, electricity was going through his hands when he was picking up the hammer, but he didn't really shoot electricity at all. This is a common problem I have with Record of Ragnarok and its god characters. You have a god mostly associated with a certain element, and then they don't use it at all. I mean, there's worse examples in this video, but I'll get to them when I get to them. Before I end this section, I want to bring up their designs. Thor doesn't really look that much like what I'd imagine Thor looking like. I mean, sure, he has red hair like how he's described in Norse mythology, but not literally red. And for some reason, he's wearing a toga. I don't really know why. He should have worn that outfit that he has in like every single scene he's in that is not the fight. And from what I've seen, Lubu looks mostly accurate. I have no idea what was going on with his entrance, though. Now we're in the top 10, in a list with only 11 entries. Round 5, Tamemon Raiden versus Shiva. To get the designs out of the way, I think Shiva looks really cool, mostly because he has a very unique design. I was very excited to see him fight because he was shown off before the fight even started. Hell, he was supposed to fight in round 2. As for his opponent, when you see this design, what comes to mind? If you said he looked like a sumo wrestler, I don't know how you got to that conclusion, but that's correct. Also, you know what I said about Valkyries turning into weapons? The red lines all over his body are supposed to be what the Valkyrie turned into. The fight starts off in a traditional sumo fashion, only for the sumo theme to be completely abandoned, like immediately. Tamemon Raiden starts the match off by doing Bowser's forward smash on Shiva. Something I was looking forward to in this fight was Shiva doing a bunch of unique moves, mostly because he's a god and has powers, and also he has 4 arms. He could probably do stuff like the Goro grab, or anything that Machamp does. Luckily, he does do those in this fight, but not for very long though.
Unleashing a crushing blow!
Shiva loses more arms in this fight than Dark Onward in the AVGN movie. Now you may be wondering, how is Raiden able to do this? The answer is pretty simple. He has some weird ass birth defect where his muscles are too big. He had to tie down his muscles with other muscles. During the fight, he even released the muscle ties, which made him look like Biscuit Oliva from that one Baki opening. Either that or Bane when he had too much venom. The Valkyrie that he merged with is keeping him from exploding. So yeah, he's finally able to use his true strength. He's also able to morph his muscles into these gross-ass watermelon arms. Shiva did get back at Raiden a few times. Like that one part where Shiva did a flame kick on Raiden and it like slashed his chest open. There's also this one part I like where Raiden like uses his tongue to break a part of his charred flesh on his lip. It's so disgusting, but it goes hard. Eventually, Shiva enters his powered-up mode and defeats Raiden. Also, ew! Oh, that's disgusting. Now, in terms of backstories, I think Shiva is on the better side of god character backstories. Raiden's is also pretty good, although a tad forgettable. The main reason why round 5 is this low on the list is because it was really disappointing. I expected more from both characters. I was hoping Shiva would use ranged fire attacks, and I would have liked Raiden to imitate E Honda more. The best Street Fighter. But still, this fight wasn't the best, even though I still kinda like it. It's a hell of a lot better than the first one. Number 9.
This is Sparta!
Round 9, Leonidas versus Apollo. To get this out of the way, not really a fan of how it's a Greek human versus a Greek god. I like it way more when the characters have different origins. Take round 1 for example. You have a Norse god versus a Chinese warrior. I think that's really cool. But besides that, I think Leonidas versus Apollo is really good. Now to get to their designs. This is how I personally imagine Apollo. Absolutely nailed it on the design. As for Leonidas, I think he kinda looks like Guile from Street Fighter, but old. Which means he looks awesome, even if he's not really what I'd imagine Leonidas looking like at all. Speaking of awesome, he's voiced by David Hayter, who you might know as one of the writers of X2, and the voice actor of Solid Snake.
Colonel, I'm trying to sneak around, but I'm dummy thick, and the clap of my ass cheeks keeps alerting the guards.
So the fight starts and whoa! Attacking already? Also, he smoked the entire cigar all in one go. Leonidas has a really cool weapon. It's a shield that can transform, and Leonidas starts moving like Thumpback from Skylanders Giants. But Apollo also has a really good weapon, the Threads of Artemis. They're golden strings that can turn into whatever Apollo wants, I guess. He can even use the thread itself as a weapon. He mostly uses boxing gloves from these threads. I like the part where he whips lines into the ground so both him and Leonidas can fight like 2D fighting game characters. Also, one of the Spartan soldiers says the thing.
This is Sparta!
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention this, but Leonidas actually really hates Apollo because he misunderstood Apollo's message. That's putting it in simple terms, but that's pretty much what happened. Apollo summons a huge statue of Artemis, which begs the question, where the hell is Artemis? Why does he have a weapon named after her? And does she have a weapon named after him? I don't know, a bunch of Record of Ragnarok weapons and moves don't really have names that make any sense by the context of where they come from. Anyways, Apollo finally uses his bow, and this weapon does a lot of collateral damage. So how is Leonidas gonna get out of this one?
This is not the end!
Holy shit! He just killed him! Just kidding. I have no idea how he survived that. Maybe his heart is on the other side like Fortune from Metal Gear Solid 2. The fight ends with Apollo doing Shroom Boom's Soul Gem move, and Leonidas does Series 2 Chop Chop's Wow Pow move. And then Apollo kills him. But before Leonidas turns into cosmic dust, he punches Apollo in the face. I forgot to mention, if you die in the Ragnarok tournament, you're just gone forever. And if a human dies, the Valkyrie goes with them. From what MasterRJT told me, the fight was changed a bit to make it not look as one-sided. And from what I noticed in the manga, it looks like Apollo didn't take a chest injury. Not exactly sure how the arrow hit both his chest and his arm, but whatever. Although I still have no idea how Apollo didn't die immediately from that. To touch on the backstories, I really liked Apollo's backstory. Leonidas's was okay, but it was kind of interesting that he had beef with Apollo. This fight was short but sweet. Number 8. Round 2, Adam vs. Zeus. This is one of the biggest and most memorable fights in the series. You got the king of the Greek gods himself, Zeus, versus the first man, Adam. Just like the previous rounds, I'll get the designs out of the way now. Zeus looks a little different. For some reason in this series, Zeus was made into a decrepit old man. It's even weirder because just like in Greek mythology, he is still the youngest of his brothers. Both Poseidon and Hades do not look old like Zeus, but I'll get to them when I get to them. Adam mostly looks like what you'd expect, even if he should have clothes on at this point. Then again, barely anyone in this series is accurate at all, kinda like how Thor doesn't have his magic belt. Despite being the most iconic fight in the series, it's really short. It does feel like a small portion of the time was put into their WWE-ass introductions. I'll talk about the backstories early. Adam's backstory's okay. It does change a lot of things, but whatever. Zeus has the worst backstory in the entire series. It only exists to explain one move. It also brought up about how Zeus killed his father. Now to the actual fight. Zeus is a MasterRJT type character. By that I mean he's a scrawny old man who becomes this huge Hulk. And he starts the fight off by throwing some punches, and more punches. And then he gets faster. Okay, so you may be wondering, when is Zeus going to use his Thunderbolt? Well, he does not use it at all. That's right, Zeus, the god who's known for throwing lightning bolts, does not do that here. Instead, he has temporal powers, which is stupid. Just use Cronus at this point. Well, at least he kind of retained Master Roshi's personality, which honestly fits Zeus perfectly. Okay, anyways, Zeus is mostly like punching really, really fast, and it keeps getting faster. Now, how is Adam supposed to beat this? Well, he has Sharingan eyes, of course. Basically, since Adam is made in the image of God, he can imitate abilities of other gods just by looking at them. This idea is so cool. Most of the fight is just them throwing hands, with both of them getting progressively faster, and Adam is usually kicking Zeus's ass. Then comes the part where Zeus goes faster than time, but Adam punches him even faster than that. And I love the part where Adam explains why he's fighting so hard.
What's the reason you want to go toe-to-toe against the gods?
Everybody's always asking me that question, and it seems now you are too. Is it hatred? Or revenge? Why does it matter? That's irrelevant. Is there any man alive who needs a reason? To protect his very own children.
Eventually, Zeus has this Toguro-esque transformation scene, which results in him turning into something called the Adamas form. The name Adamas will be used later, and I will definitely bring it up later. So they fight more. I like the part where Zeus uses a move called God's True Right, and he throws a right hand punch. But after that, he says God's True Left, and throws a left hand punch. Definitely my favorite move name in the entire series. Unfortunately, Adam dies of exhaustion, but he was really close to beating Zeus. Somehow Adam literally died, but he was still throwing hands with Zeus. Something I've noticed in this series is that a lot of characters have a power where they're on a time limit. Like, if they use a power too much or for too long, they would die. It's a decent way of causing tension, but I feel like too many characters have this kind of drawback to their powers. Both Adam and Zeus had this drawback. This fight was mostly really good, although the animation was kinda shit. I think the animation got a lot better over time, but this is round 2. But yeah, good fight. It's kinda hard to talk about because it was pretty simple. Number 7.
Dude, you're embarrassing me in front of the wizards.
Round 8. Nikola Tesla versus Beelzebub.
If it was up to me, this round would be a lot higher than it ended up here, but unfortunately, we're going with Punching Bag's ranking, so it's taking the number 7 spot. To start off the bad, there is no guessing who is going to win during this fight. It's very clear from the fact he gets an episode of backstory to himself and a second flashback that Beelzebub's going to win. Given that me and Punching Bag both think that the best part of this show is seeing the fighters go up against each other and not knowing who's going to win, it's quite a big flaw that you know who's going to win from the start. And the second real flaw of it is that in the anime version, the CGI that they use for Nikola Tesla's suit is downright horrendous. It looks really bad at times. With that all being said though, this is still my second favourite round in the series. I think Tesla is the second best human character in the show, behind only one other character who I'll mention later on in the video. And I think giving him an Iron Man suit so he can fight is so stupid that it loops back around to being insanely cool. I also think it's really funny that he ends up using a lot more lightning than Thor or Zeus use in their own rounds, which isn't saying much because they used none in their rounds, but still. Tesla's backstory does kind of suck, unfortunately. It's the weakest one in the entire show in my opinion, but to make up for that, he's an incredible character in the fight itself and has some of the greatest attacks in the show, especially his Geometria Zone or Prison for Gods, which I'll tell Punching Bag to put up one of the panels from it in the manga that I think is really cool.
In this 9.63 meter world, my friend, there's only one God. And it's me.
And also his teleportation, which leads to some really interesting dynamics in the fight, especially with the Plasma Pulse Punch Cross at the very end of the fight as the deciding move. On the other hand, I think Beelzebub is also really good. It's a bit strange that they made his design into an emo twink, but it kind of works with what they give him, so I'm willing to, overlook it. He has a great character arc across the rounds. I won't spoil it, you should go watch the show for yourself. And his abilities are also really good. He has sort of vibration control that mimics the beating wings of a fly, and it's either an attack or a shield depending on which arm he uses it from. Overall, I think round 8 ranks very highly with me because it's one of the most creative rounds in the series. You have two brilliant characters with weird abilities that you don't really see anywhere else in the show, and it just comes together to make one of the best rounds in my opinion, but Punching Bag thinks it's a bit lower than I do, so I think I'll let him finish off this section because I know he had some stuff he wanted to talk about with it as well.
Surprisingly, I don't think I have that much more to add here. I still think this fight's pretty good, it's just not as good as the other ones I'm going to talk about later. I feel like Tesla is one of those characters where if he were in any other round, he would have probably won. Unfortunately for Tesla, he was hard countered in this fight, and also there was no way he was winning, mainly because humanity won the previous 2 rounds. I think the fight would be better if Tesla won, just so he could put Beelzebub out of his misery, since that was a major part of his story. Yeah, that's the big reason why this fight is so low. I just feel like the ending was a little bit unsatisfying. Number 6.
You got yourself a sweet blade.
Round 10. Soji Okita versus Susanoo. Round 10.
Features the strongest manslayer in human history, Soji Okita, and the god's strongest godslayer, Susanoo no Mikoto. To start with, I love it in Record of Ragnarok when the rounds have different arenas to the other fights, so this one being set in the Edo period of Kyoto is great for making it visually distinct from the other rounds. I do think round 10 suffers slightly from Soji Okita being the second Japanese swordsman in a series where Sasuke Kojo has already filled that niche and done it better, especially when the other Japanese fighters, Raiden and Kintoki, have other things that set them apart from the swordsman role. This isn't to say that Okita isn't a good fighter in his own right, as the emotional arc he delivers in round 10, being able to give the fight that he never could in his life because he was struck with tuberculosis, is quite emotional, and he delivers on the hype that he built himself up on since he was introduced earlier in the series, facing up against the Lucky Gods with Buddha and Sasuke. In combat, Soji's main power comes from being able to increase his blood flow up to 3 times, which lets him move faster, hit stronger, etc. He also gets his powers from being so edgy, because he has a spirit demon living inside of him that grants him strength at the cost of his own life. I wish I was joking when I said that. To me, the standout of round 10 is definitely on the god side with Susanoo. He's easily the most likeable god in the series, and his backstory details how he abandoned his own godhood to study swordsmanship under humanity, with his final attack in the round being when he learned from masters of swordsmanship in humanity's history. Whilst other rounds have had gods like Hades and Apollo show respect to their opponent, Susanoo's backstory shows that he saw Okita as one of the greatest in human history and specifically requested himself to be put into the fight upon learning that Okita was the chosen human, which adds a great level to their dynamic in this fight. I also like that his sword was the masterwork of several different blacksmithing gods from across different pantheons, because Record of Ragnarok, for its concept, doesn't really show you the different pantheons interacting that much outside of the main cast. That being said, it does make it a shame when halfway through the fight Okita destroys Susanoo's sword, but him using an invisible sword technique, only that a god could do because a human would die if they used it, more than makes up for it. Additionally, I think this fight presents one of the best reasons why the winning fighter won the fight, as throughout the fight it's been clearly shown that Okita is much faster than Susanoo, where Susanoo excels in the power department, thus making it much more believable when Okita wins by interrupting Susanoo before he can get off his next attack, rather than overpowering him in some way, or not. And as well, Okita ends up as one of the fighters who sustains the most damage in his fight. He would go on to die if it wasn't for the interference of Izanagi, the Japanese creator god, or primordial god as the show would like to call it. Overall, I think that round 10 provides a much needed different vibe than the rest of the rounds in the show have, whereas most of them can feel like a grudge match or have one side definitely hating the other side. Round 10 feels like 2 warriors excited to finally give it their all in the fight of their lives. And I don't think it's a round that does anything particularly spectacularly, but I don't think it does anything badly either and has some great standout moments throughout it, and I think that boosts it above all of the rounds we've listed below it, only at the number 6 spot on this list.
Well, I can't wait for this fight to get animated. Number 5.
Constructicons unite!
Round 6. Buddha versus Bishamonten Benzaiten Daikoku Ten Jurojin Hote Fukurokuju and Ibisu / Zerofuku / Hajun. Not sure if everyone's going to agree with this, but this is probably the most different match in the series. Mainly because it had a god switch sides and fight for humanity instead. And also, you saw all those names. So after all the other gods are upset at Buddha betraying them, the 7 lucky gods show up because they hate Buddha for some reason. Just to jog your memory, their names are Bishamonten Benzaiten Daikoku Ten Jurojin Hote Fukurokuju and Ibisu. Oh yeah, looks like Buddha's gonna have to fight all 7 of them. Just kidding, they combine together kinda like Voltron. Now, is it kind of disappointing that one of the characters on the original roster doesn't really fight? Just a little. There's a joke in the manga that MasterRJT told me about where, as they were combining, their fusion name just kept getting more and more ridiculous. Then the narrator talks about how there was a secret 8th lucky god all along. It's like how some of my friends made up a completely new person in our Fortnite friend group, who is also coincidentally the 8th person. The resulting fusion is Zerofuku, who was actually their original form. Hey guys, I added my OC into mythology. Is he too noticeable? So, Zerofuku is the god of misfortune. Now's a good time to talk about their designs. I know I forgot to do that on the previous round, but they're both pretty good there. So, Buddha doesn't really look like what I'd think of when I think of Buddha. I don't know why his teeth look like that. He does make up for it by being one of my favorite characters in the series. As for Zerofuku, he kinda looks like either a Demon Slayer character or a One Piece character. Demon Slayer's like really mid, and I am not watching One Piece. I should also explain their backstories. From what I know about Buddhism, it got some parts right. I mean, obviously, Buddha did not have a friend named Jataka who was dying. But hey, the backstory's pretty memorable. Since Zerofuku is a completely original character, he has a completely original backstory. Before he turned evil, he took other people's suffering away from them to try to make them live better lives. But this gave the opposite effect and made everyone a bunch of spoiled assholes. Later, he saw Buddha making people happy the correct way, which obviously made Zerofuku really jealous. He crashes out and turns evil, but then immediately splits into the 7 lucky gods. Anyways, the fight. Zerofuku has an axe with a really stupid name. It's Catastrophe, by the way. The less fortunate Zerofuku is, the more powerful he gets, which happens super often because of Buddha's power. Buddha has his magic eye power of his own, like several other characters in this show for some reason. And his power is pretty much seeing the intent of his target, so he can basically predict everything Zerofuku does. It's just like me watching the movie Paul. I think this first part of the fight is really funny just because of how often Zerofuku is getting unlucky. Obviously, Zerofuku is getting super angry over this, just like me watching the movie Paul. Buddha's weapon is also pretty cool. He has a staff that changes forms based on his emotions, although I don't really think his emotions really play that big of a factor in this. It looks like he's mostly changing it at will. Each form of the staff is based on one of the 6 Buddhist realms. Although we only saw 5 alternate forms, I'm not really sure if the base form of the staff counts. So yeah, the entire fight is Buddha kicking Zerofuku's ass the whole time. Then he tells Zerofuku that he should stop being so hard on himself, and Zerofuku listens. Zerofuku is redeemed, and it looks like everyone's gonna live happily ever after. Just kidding, Zerofuku gets possessed by a demon. I don't know what the hell is up with the dragons in the transformation scene. So, Zerofuku gets possessed by Hajun, the devil king of the 6th heaven. If you don't know who this is, he's pretty much the Buddhist equivalent of Satan. Now, this is where the fight gets good! Obviously, this character's horrifying, and, like, literally everyone in the arena is scared of him. Even characters like Loki. Now, this part of the fight is not as one-sided as earlier, mainly because Hajun is already really strong, and he has no light in his soul. And due to that, Buddha cannot predict his movements. Hajun has a bunch of crazy moves. He can turn his arms into weapons like an axe or a drill. One of my other favorite move names in the series is Pandemonium Cycle! And it's him using a drill. Since Hajun is possessing someone who ended up good, Buddha is not liking that. It causes Buddha's weapon to change into the scythe. Not a fan of Buddha feeling angry, it's just a little out of character, but whatever. Later, Buddha is starting to scare Hajun, which causes Hajun to rip his own arm off and pull it inside out so it turns into a sword. That goes hard as shit. With his sword that looks like a back scratcher, he breaks Buddha's weapon. When it's starting to look bleak, Zerofuku's soul teams up with Buddha so they can kinda like do the things that Valkyries do with the weapons, which gives Buddha a Meta Knight sword. Due to Hajun's fear, it's causing light to come back into his soul and makes Buddha predict him. Then Buddha kills him, and Zerofuku goes away. I would explain why Zerofuku was possessed in the first place, but I've already been on this section for too long. I really like this fight for being super different. This literally feels like 2 fights in one. All characters in this fight also had really cool powers. So yeah, I really like this one. Number 4.
I have an army.
Round 11, Simo Hauha versus Loki. From my research, I think that's how you pronounce his name. If it's not, you can tell me in the comments. But anyways, I'll let Master talk about this round.
I'll be the first to admit that maybe round 11 shouldn't be this high up, but Punching Bag hasn't read the manga, so he can't stop me. The combatants for round 11 are Loki on the god side, and Simo Hauha on the human side, even though I probably butchered his name. To start with, like I said for round 10, and what I will say for round 4, rounds that have a unique arena that sets them apart from the rest of the series are always really good, so I love that this round is set within like a snowy Finnish forest. And past that, one of the main reasons I really like round 11 is that it doubles both as a round, but in a way that many of us don't. It serves as the conclusion to the story of one of the characters, in this case, Loki. Throughout the series, Loki has always been one of the most egotistical gods, and in some of the more recent rounds, going into this one, you sort of get the sense that Loki has an unhealthy love for Brunhilde, and it's a combination of those two factors that allow this matchup to happen, with Loki being pit against his one true counter because Brunhilde herself begged him to go into the round for her sake. And despite Simo completely dominating the fight, they do it in a way where Loki doesn't look weak, he doesn't look, like completely disadvantaged. He's coming up with new strategies, new things that you think are going to work before they're shut down. And it makes it clear after the fact in chapter 106 that if it was anyone other than Simo that Loki was up against, then Loki would have absolutely won the fight, no questions. As a character, Simo doesn't add as much to the round as Loki does, but I think he's good in what he does, and I love the plot point of him being so horrified by his own actions of killing people that he's able to recognize when he's taking a life, when he's shooting a living target, and that's how he's able to see through Loki's illusions. And his seriousness in the fight contrasts really well with Loki, who is always more playful and he's more confident and cocky. And also Simo turns his organs into bullets, and that's how they're so strong, and I think that's pretty cool. And of course, like with round 8, there is a lot of uniqueness in the power sets of the fighters this time. Loki has magical deception, where obviously Jack the Ripper had more sleight of hand based stuff, and lying. Loki is just, you can't tell what's real or not, it's more magical based, it's a good contrast. And Simo is the only ranged fighter on the human side, which adds like a great dynamic to the fight where Loki's having to chase after him, rather than the two of them clashing head to head. Overall, whilst it's shorter than most of the other fights in the series, Loki vs Simo gives off a lot of great moments, some of my favourite moments in the entire series, especially that entire final chapter, which is chapter 105 if you're going to read it. And it's one of the best fights for keeping you guessing on who is going to win, because you have Loki, who has such a unique power set and is a major character, versus Simo, who isn't a major character, he's a very minor character, but he seems to come up with new ways every single time to take out what Loki's put in front of him. And so it keeps you guessing, which is brilliant, because as I mentioned in the other rounds where you can't tell who's going to win are always the best in Record of Ragnarok, especially on the first viewing. And so yeah, overall, me personally, I think it deserves the number 4 spot. I can see why others wouldn't, but I think that's where we're going to put it for this ranking. With that all said, that brings us to the top 3, so I'll pass you over to Punching Bag to start it off.
Number 3.
You challenge me, mortal?
Round 3, Kojiro Sasaki versus Poseidon. All top 3 fights are interchangeable for me. I'll get the designs out of the way first. Somehow Kojiro chose to get older after he died. It's not really known how old he was when he died, but he wasn't this old. But it makes him cool. Now for Poseidon, somehow he doesn't really look like what I'd imagine Poseidon looking like, but also he's still recognizably Poseidon. Weird how that happens. Now for their backstories. Kojiro's thing is that he's history's biggest loser. This is a reference to how in real life he lost a very famous sword fight. Although this version of him kinda lost every single fight ever. It does make him feel like a compelling character though. Poseidon's backstory is not that much of a backstory. Due to how he acts, I don't really think he needs one. His backstory mostly showed how merciless he is. Remember when I said Adamas during the Adam vs. Zeus segment? Adamas is the name of a god made up for this show, and he's also the brother of Poseidon, Zeus, and Hades. He was killed by Poseidon in Poseidon's backstory. It was revealed that he was still alive because Beelzebub rebuilt him as a cyborg. Hey guys, I added my OC to mythology. Is he too noticeable? Unlike Zero Fuku, this guy does not fight, and he does not turn into an established mythological figure. Anyways, I'll talk about the fight now. Kojiro jumps Poseidon, but Poseidon immediately kills him. Just kidding, Kojiro imagined that happening. Kojiro's whole thing is that he can predict the opponent's moves, not in the same way that Buddha does it. He mostly plays out scenarios in his head and how he can defeat his opponent. Poseidon mostly jabs with his trident, and occasionally he will swing it, or maybe even thrust. This is probably the most egregious example of a character not using their own element they're associated with. Not a single attack where he actually uses water. And similar to Zeus, he fights like another god. Now, what other Greek god is really fast and has a staff-like weapon? If you said Hermes, that's what I was thinking of. Hermes is in the show, but he does not fight. But whatever, Poseidon's more important than Hermes. I like how Kojiro uses his real-world signature move in this fight, the same one that inspired Aerial from Pokemon. After that, Poseidon whistles his own theme song. I'm not kidding, he actually did. To be honest, this was awesome. Eventually, Poseidon breaks Kojiro's sword in half. But luckily, Kojiro's Valkyrie happens to have a split personality, so he gets to have two swords now. Poseidon also has this crazy afterimage dome attack. I guess this attack is slightly water-related because he's kinda just raining attacks, but he's still not using actual water to attack despite there being a moat around the arena. There's still a good reason for this. It's because Poseidon is super arrogant, and this does lead to his downfall. Poseidon gets killed in a way that's a callback to Kojiro's backstory. This was probably one of the most brutal deaths in the series. Most of the other deaths are just characters getting stabbed or decapitated. This was just straight up a fatality. To get the flaws out of the way, even if there was a narrative reason for it, Poseidon not using anything water-related was kinda disappointing. And this is the most obvious win in the series. There was no way that history's greatest loser, who also chose to be an old man, would ever lose this fight. And there's no way humanity would lose 3 times in a row. This is also one of the most narratively strong fights in the series, which says a lot because a lot of fights in the series are very narratively rich. I also really like both characters. Anyways, move on to number 2. Number 2.
I think it's time for Jack to let her rip.
Round 4, Jack the Ripper versus Heracles.
Taking mine and punching bag's number 2 spot, it's Jack the Ripper versus Heracles, which is by far my favourite fight in the series, and to be honest, one of my favourite fights in any series ever, because to me, Jack versus Heracles is a perfect representation of what Record of Ragnarok is, because it's a human who is by far and away weaker than their opponent, facing the impossible and still managing to come out on top. I'll make it absolutely no secret that Jack the Ripper is my favourite character in Record of Ragnarok. Personality wise, Jack has a very interesting sort of gentlemanly attitude, and it makes for some very fun stuff, like at the start of the fight where he invites Heracles to have a cup of tea with him, and as well as this, his whole thing is about being like deceptive and using trickery. Just like kind of how I said Loki had that in round 11, it made it very interesting. The same applies here, it makes it a very interesting fight to watch, all the trickery. Jack is the only fighter in Record of Ragnarok who actively lies about his abilities. Initially saying his divine weapon is these pair of scissors, then he's like, oh, it's actually these small objects from this bag, and he uses that to gain advantage over Heracles. So eventually, near the end of the fight, when it's revealed his divine weapon is actually the gloves that turn anything he touches into a divine weapon. It's a brilliant reveal because it's shown that him being deceiving about his divine weapon is something he'll do, and it's also a nice play on the expression that anything can be a weapon in the hands of a killer. Also, he does that big final reveal by turning Big Ben's clock face into a weapon, and I honestly think that's cool as shit. They do a very good job of setting up a very good versus evil dynamic in this fight, with Jack the human being the evil one, as opposed to the gods who are usually, you know, the more antagonistic ones. So it's a very good dynamic, because you don't know who you want to root for, because you want humans to win, but you also don't want Jack to win. And it's for that reason I love that they don't shy away from showing Jack to be this messed up kind of guy. He's obviously not right in the head, and while he has his reasons for it, his backstory goes over it. He's got this sort of Sharingan that lets him see the colour of emotions, and he just loves seeing the colour of fear, which is why he kills people, so he can see them be fearful. And I like how that comes into play in the fight, with him obviously looking to make Heracles be the colour of fear, but Heracles never once surrenders to that because he just loves humanity too much. It's a very nice dynamic. Moving on from Jack and going on to his other fighter, Heracles. Heracles as a myth, him in the 12 Labours, is my favourite Greek myth. And I do actually quite like what they do with Heracles. He's not one of my favourite Ragnarok characters, but he's good for what he is. I'll start with the negatives because they're kind of nitpicky and, you know, they don't really impact the fight as a whole and they work in the context of the series. The first is the tattoos things that he has where, oh, he's in more pain the more tattoos on him grow, and I just don't get why it's there. It barely even impacts the fight itself and it's just not from the myths. And of course his backstory as a whole is just completely wrong to his character, and I think Punching Bags told me before it doesn't even work in the dub because there's a scene where Zeus is like, oh, I'll name you after my wife, Hera, and it makes sense when he's called Heracles, but in the dub they call him Hercules, so it doesn't even make sense. Going past the negatives though and looking to the positives, there's a lot I like about Heracles. His design in this show for one is really good. It's not entirely mythologically accurate, I would have liked to see his Nemean lion skin, but for who he is in the show, I think it works brilliantly. And I'll mention now, I love Jack the Ripper's design as well, I forgot to mention it during his section. But Heracles not having the Nemean lion skin is kind of fine because his power set I also love, and it's him using the 12 Labours as his abilities. In the show he uses the Nemean lion, the Stymphalian birds, the Cretan bull, and Cerberus. And what's there is really good. I kind of wish we'd gotten something like, I don't know, the Linnaean Hydra would have been cool to see, but otherwise what he has is really cool, and he and Jack just have such unique abilities that make this fight much more interesting to watch than a lot of the other ones in the show. And of course, character-wise, Heracles is a great foil for Jack, because where Jack hates humanity, goes out of his way to kill people and induce fear into them, Heracles loves humanity. He was ready to give his life to protect humanity, and even now, even during Ragnarok, he wants to help humanity survive. It's a very good sort of difference between the both of them, and it's the flip of the usual script of human good, god evil, which is very refreshing to see. And I love him trying to get through to Jack near the end of the fight, and by the end of it, even in death, he's setting Jack onto the right path because he's just that boundlessly kind. One of my main points during my sections has been that these rounds are always better when you aren't aware of who's going to win. I mentioned this especially with round 8, it's very obvious who the winner was there. Round 4 does not have this at all. It's at a point early enough in the series where you don't think they're going to give humanity 2 back-to-back wins, but also not completely off the table, and since Jack is being put up as more of an underdog in this fight, then you really have no idea who's going to win, especially with all the trickery that goes on during it. Another reason why I really like this fight is, like I've said before, fights with unique environments are always great in the show. So this one being set in 18th century London, the London that Jack is familiar with, is good not only for the setting of the fight, but it's also good narratively because it shows Jack's cunning before the battle even begins, where he's taking advantage of Heracles' kindness to get himself into an arena where he has the advantage and he has the home field. Round 4 easily earns its place as the number 2 spot on this list, being in fact so good it's one of the 2 rounds I have collected the physical manga volumes of, along with what me and Punching Bag have placed up at the number 1 spot. Speaking of which, I'm going to hand this video back to Punching Bag so he can finish it off and tell you about the best round that Record of Ragnarok has to offer.
Number 1.
Guys, relax. It's only halftime.
Round 7. Qin Shi Huang versus Hades. Just like the previous segment, there's a lot to talk about. So I'll do the designs and backstories first, like I usually do. I probably don't even need to say this, but Qin Shi Huang is definitely the most changed character in this series. I mean, just look at him. This guy was a tyrant in real life. But here he's a badass martial artist with a blindfold. Still an emperor though, but a less cruel one. I like how Hades isn't made to be a straight-up villain, something you don't see often. I also like that he has his bident. As for Hades' design overall, I think he looks pretty cool. The fancy clothes is a nod to him being associated with wealth, which is honestly a nice touch. Similar to Jack the Ripper, Qin Shi Huang has one of the best backstories. He also has some weird-ass condition where if he sees someone get hurt, he gets hurt there as well. I know there's a narrative reason for this, but this video is already super long already, so themes and such. Hades' backstory is mostly about how he beat the Titans all by himself. As I'm saying this, I just realized this fight is pretty much a Hypernova versus Dying Ant kind of battle. at least from the context I provided so far. The opening to the fight is kind of funny. Chin was not only sitting where Hades was sitting, he also enters from the god's side of the arena. Also, Hades combines the remains of Poseidon's weapon with his own. That's why it has that same fish fin decoration on it. Hades fights kinda like Poseidon, except his attacks favor power over speed. Chin also gets armor as his divine weapon. No idea how he's gonna kill Hades with that, but whatever. Anyways, Chin's weakness is also his strength. Due to his experience, he can see his opponent's pressure points, and he mostly uses counterattacks against Hades. I forgot to mention that Chin killed a demon named Shiyu, and that's also what Chin's power is called. Chin also has different attacks based on the different types of weaponry from ancient China. I like how his bow form is him spitting air bubbles so he can kind of throw Hades off. I also really like the part where Chin stabs Hades in the stomach. Not really sure why that move is represented by the dragon, but whatever. I think the tiger makes more sense, since his moves are also based on the 4 symbols, which are 4 different beasts that represent the directions in ancient China. I know this because of Yu Yu Hakusho and Pokemon of all things. I like how Hades has a move named Cornucopia, and it's him doing a knee kick. Like, sure, of course that move needed a name.
Cornucopia! Cornucopia! Cornucopia!
Eventually, Hades uses his iconic blood powers and makes his spear bigger. Not really an element I'd associate with Hades, but okay. Oh yeah, this is also the weapon he used to beat the Titans! With Hades becoming a bigger problem, Chin decides to change his weapon. I feel like it would be way better to have a sword than armor in a fight to the death, especially against a god who beat the Titans on his own. Hades plows off Chin's arm, not long after Chin kills Hades. This might be one of the most surprising wins in the series, mainly because Chin took a lot more damage than Hades, and he still managed to win. This is also the first time in the series where humanity has more wins than the gods. A huge reason on why I like this fight is that it looks really good. The stage is really dark but is illuminated by purple lights, and it makes this fight look very unique. Season 3 as a whole looks a lot better than the previous 2 seasons, and of course this was the opening fight on Season 3. I should also say how long I've been a fan of the series, since this is kind of important to the fight. Round 5 was the latest fight in the anime, and Round 9 was just about to start in the manga. Round 6 came out, and I had to wait 2 years for Round 7. The wait was so worth it. I love this fight. I really liked both characters, and I thought it was pretty cool that Hades got to join in the tournament, even though he wasn't originally planned. He willingly joined the tournament because Buddha betrayed the other gods. So yeah, the entire roster is a bit lopsided right now. I really hope Nostradamus doesn't fight because I really want to see Rasputin versus Anubis. And it would go so hard if the Rasputin song played in the background. Although that's very unlikely. It would just be really cool though. I can't believe I forgot to say this for the entire video, but holy crap, the art in the manga is amazing. Well, that was all Record of Ragnarok rounds ranked, except for Kentoki Sakata versus Odin. This video took me over a month to make, and that fight is still not over yet. It would be really funny if the fight ended this month. As far as I know, this is one of the longest running fights. Hell, it could be the last fight in the series for all we know. But yeah, tell me what you think about the video. Here's Master's own personal ranking. Also, comment on what characters you think should have been in this series. I personally think it would have been really cool if Benjamin Franklin was in. He could probably fly on a kite and swing a key sword on a string like Kratos. I also plan to do another horrible summary after this. Probably going to be a Skylanders one. Anyways, thanks for watching.